welcome for everyone for our Sunday talk, and warm welcome also for Yogesh Sharda, who is our speaker tonight. And I will speak first a few words in Finnish, and then I will introduce Yogesh Sharda in English. Elikkä meillä on tähän luentoon käännös. Ja käännös löytyy, jos olette puhelimella, niin puhelimesta löytyy tuo 3 pistettä ja niitä klikkaamalla niin pääsette sinne kohtaan Interpretation käännös ja valitkaa Finnish Suomi. Ja jos olette tietokoneella, niin sieltä löytyy tuo maapallon kuva ja klikatkaa sitä ja valitkaa Finnish. Ei muuta kuin nautitaan tämän päivän luennosta. So warm welcome Yogesh, and just a few words about Yogesh. And he's been a student and a teacher of Raj Yoga meditation for over 30 years. And for last 16 years, or maybe it's even more, he has been in Istanbul, and he's looking after as a national coordinator, the programs for Brahma Kumaris in Turkey. And what I like about Yogesh, we can really hear it today from his lecture. He's been taught by one of the world's greatest yogis, and he's been always very close to our senior teachers. And Yogesh has always been very, very serious effort maker. But the nice thing is that even he's very serious, we can see progress and always new insights from him. He is so entertaining in the same time. So a living, walking example of how spirituality is very entertaining when spirituality is really understood well. And he also has done some work in the business world as a corporate trainer, so very much looked after speaker also in the business world. So warm welcome, and today's topic, it's about intelligence, emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Very interesting topic. So warm welcome, Yogesh, and lovely to see you in Finland this way in the Zoom. And Yogesh has also visited in Finland, which is nice thing. You have seen the winter and you have seen the summer. So warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Gitte. Thank you. And it's a real pleasure, a real delight to be with all of you here today. And as was mentioned, this topic of intelligence is really something important for us to explore in the way that we are living these days. And also just to add, spirituality, that although it is a serious subject, but yet at the same time, the aim of living a life of spirituality is there should be happiness, there should be a sense of well-being within our life. You want to say something?
Just one thing, it's good that before you will have for half an hour, but the audience will have a chance to ask questions after this half an hour. So I just wanted to say this. So sorry about this, and yes, please continue.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so let's begin to explore this word intelligence. And it's one of those words which has taken on newer definitions as the years have rolled by. Now, why should we explore this? Well, let's begin looking firstly at how we are doing as a race, as a human race. So within the last year or so, we have been able to do things like send vehicles to Mars. Within the last month or so, we've been able to take a joyride into space for a few minutes. And so it seems as though we're making progress. Things are improving in some sense. But on the other hand, back here on Earth, it seems as though we find it difficult to get along with each other. There seems to be no end to new conflicts breaking out in different parts of the world. And so what's going on? On the one hand, we seem to have great progress technologically and in terms of science and invention. On the other hand, something is missing in the equation of life, whereby we find stress levels increasing and people finding it difficult to get along with each other. And why this is important is because this journey to really being at peace with ourselves is indeed a return journey. Why do we look for solutions to conflict? Why are there so many books and programs on how to be happy, or learn to discover your inner peace, learn how to generate love and respect in your relationships? It means we want this, and therefore we seek it. We try to find ways to be like that. There are no books or seminars on how to be more stressful, how to increase the anger in your life, how to have a miserable life. There are no books on such topics. Why? Because this is not our nature. And exploring and understanding the self is also something which has been touched upon by the ancient Greeks. There are some great quotes, for example, from Aristotle. He said that the beginning of all wisdom is to know the self. And a more famous quote from Socrates, something like, the unexamined life is not worth living. And so just as there is a world outside of us, but there is also a world inside of us. And in my view, due to an imbalance between understanding and taking care of the inner world and our outer world, due to an imbalance, we have the stresses and strains that we have in the world today. Now, for our interest, we are going to look at our own personal lives, because all positive change, all meaningful change, of course, begins with our own selves. So let's look at a few slides which will help me to explain some of the ideas I'd like to share with you today. So here comes the first one. Let's look at the plan. Here's the plan for life that we're all born into. We tend to be thrown into, at least in much of the world. So over here is you, and just come to the other end of this diagram. Over here is the aim of life. So let's say, for example, a child is born and you are asked to give that child your wishes for life. That I wish in life you experience this and you have this and this. You may say that I wish in your life you feel secure. I wish you have peace of mind. My wish is you're surrounded by love and you're happy. And if somebody has these things, then you could say it's an okay life or a pretty good life if you have all of these things. But then as we grow up, we are told, well, if you want the aim, if you want these things, then there's something else you need to get first. You need to acquire the means in order to achieve that aim. And so the means are, you need to have a good education, and then you'll get a good job, and through that you'll earn a good amount of money, and through that you'll have the house, the car, the holidays, etc. And then you'll be happy. You'll have all of these things. But something has happened within the last few decades, especially as life has sped up. And that is that the means has become the new aim. This has become the aim. And so all of our attention, our efforts, our energy tends to go into getting that education, getting the right job, earning enough money, and so on. And if you're happy, if you're at peace, well, then you're lucky. And so the real aim has become incidental, and we've made the means into the new aim. And this has come at the detriment of our internal, our spiritual health, and also our emotional health. As we see even in sports, mental health issues are now coming more into the open. And so intelligence is more than simply rational intelligence. And let's look at another slide to look at how these three work together. So here we are. So a simplified version, of course. IQ, which is a person's rational intelligence, is largely to do with logic, reason, analysis, and so on. And it was a way to measure how well a person may do in academic life and then also in career. And if somebody scored high on an IQ test, it would be said that she or he is very intelligent. And IQ is largely a measure of how well you are able to handle things. So things really means resources, things outside of you. But as we know, this is no longer just a measure of how successful you will be in life, because IQ is simply one part of the whole equation of intelligence. The next one shown here is, as you see, EQ, a person's emotional intelligence. Now, there's no fixed definition of what this is, but one way by which you may describe emotional intelligence is how well you are able to understand and manage your own emotions, and how well you are able to understand other people's emotions. If you can do the first, then you can do the second. So if I'm able to handle my own moods, my own emotions, I am better placed to be able to understand and handle another person. So if I, for example, fall into a bad mood and I'm unable to get out of that for hours or days, then it's as though I'm not available to interact or be productive with other people. Now, for all of us, we may sometimes lose it. We may get irritated, we may get annoyed, get angry. We may tend to lose our peace of mind. But what's important is how quickly can I lift myself out of that and return to an inner space of self-dignity, self-respect. When a person is in a bad mood, it's as though there is a sign across their forehead saying, "Don't talk to me today. I am not in the mood. Don't make any jokes." And so people then stay away. And so relationships also suffer when a person is lost in their own emotions. And further, of course, is what tends to happen is we then project our emotions. My sense of dissatisfaction with something in my life, I may then project onto another person. And often the words may come from another individual. What did I do to you? Why is this happening? What's wrong? So managing our emotions is an essential skill when it comes to handling other people and relationships. Now, for all of us, there are some people we interact with who may be similar to us in terms of personality, and we find it easy to deal with them, and we like to spend time with them because it's easy, it's pleasant. There are other people who may be a little different to you, and so you might see them now and then. But then there are other people who may be quite different to you in terms of personality and style, and we tend to describe those people as difficult individuals. So how to deal with somebody who may be very critical towards you? How to handle your own failures? What is your relationship with failure? Think back to the very first thing that you failed at. Can you remember the first thing that you failed at? Now, probably you can't, but I would say the first thing that you failed at was trying to walk. Yes, true? You must have fallen down 5 times, 50 times, maybe 500 times. But what happens, of course, is each time the child falls down, the parent lifts the child up and says, let's try again, let's try again, let's keep going. Until you learn how to balance, until you learn to use those legs properly. Now imagine if the parent said something opposite when the child fell down. Imagine a child falling down the first time and the parents saying, this walking business is not really for you, is it? Don't waste your time trying to walk. This is not for you. If that happened, then we would all still be crawling around on the floor, even now. But they encourage the child to learn to walk. In much the same way, an important emotional intelligence skill is to learn how to have a positive self-dialogue. Talking to my own self, guiding my own self. And why that's important is because the mind is like a child. A child knows what he or she wants, but not what he or she needs. And therefore it's important to speak to the mind. When you feel a bit upset, when you feel maybe angry with something, when you feel not so good about yourself because of maybe some mistake that you've made, it's important to coach yourself, talk to yourself. And I find, for example, 3 simple steps, helpful and practical. One is always to ask the self, what can I learn from this? Whatever situation I made a mistake in, could be something even very tiny, but one, quickly identify the learning potential. What is there for me to learn from this? And even write it down. 2, give yourself permission to forget the situation. Let it go. Allow it to flow into the past. The past is called the past for a reason. It's supposed to be in the past. And number 3 is then to move on. Let me carry the lesson into tomorrow, but forget the situation. If I'm able to do this, to have this approach as I pass through life, the mind remains light. The mind remains peaceful and calm. Plus, I am learning new lessons. Now, here are a couple more things about emotional intelligence, and then we'll look at the spiritual one. So one of the reasons for emotions flaring up, especially emotions like anger or stress, if you really look at it in detail, you find what is really behind anger is the tendency to try to control. This is the problem. In my mind, when I'm trying to control something which is not controllable, the result is anger, which is one form of stress. Now, this diagram attempts to make quite clear what we can control and what we cannot control. So over here on the left are things we have no control over. And what kind of things are they? In terms of things which cause us stress, there's things like traffic. You can see the list here: politicians, noise, disrespect, that should be, and other behaviors of people which tend to flare up emotions, the feeling of injustice, whether it's something happening to you or you see it happening to somebody else. Irresponsibility, dishonesty, and the list goes on. All of these things we really have very little control over, or no control. What do we have control over 100%, at least potentially? All of these things which are connected with me, my response, my attitude, my words, my thoughts. And so the question is, if I try to control that which cannot be controlled, how will I feel? I'll feel angry, I'll feel stressed, I'll feel upset. So what to do is to shift this desire for control from the outside to the inside. And this is the real work. This is a big number when it comes to personal growth. It's not about doing nothing. It's not about being passive, but it's about reminding myself I cannot control what's happening outside of me in terms of situations or circumstances or even somebody's behavior. What I can control is my response to situations, circumstances, and others' behavior. If I am consumed by what I do not like about someone or something, then I will generate my own stress. If instead I am concerned with how I wish to respond to that, notice how the stress in your life reduces quite dramatically, and you're honoring your peace of mind. This is really one of the essential skills of emotional intelligence, is the realization of where control is possible and where control is not possible. And here's a little formula which can summarize this and maybe easy to remember. So E plus R equals O. O stands for the outcome of a situation. There are some outcomes we are pleased with, so no problem there. But then there are outcomes you are not pleased with. Maybe a certain relationship in your life or certain situation at work. The question is, in order to change those outcomes, which of these two, E or R, are you trying to control or change? If you try to control the event, which is the person or the situation outside of you, then hello, stress. If instead I focus upon improving my response to the event, I have just as much impact upon the outcome. Now, the power of human thought is immense. And I was conversing with a friend of mine the other day, and we came up with this thought that problems are the creation of a weak mind. Problems are the creation of a weak mind. What does that mean? We all have situations in our lives. Sometimes there are small ones, sometimes big ones. But when I place them in my mind and feed them with the negative thoughts, I make it into a problem. So it's very important with regard to emotional intelligence to keep the mind free of negative thoughts and negative emotions, and not to feed situations so that they become problems. Now, let me quickly jump to the last intelligence and just spend a few minutes touching upon that. And so the third one is our spiritual intelligence. So it's this one here. Sometimes described as a combination of the other two, or the highest of all the intelligences. Now, how would we define spiritual intelligence? And again, there's no one set definition, but here is one that I feel works quite well. And that is, spiritual intelligence is connected with identity and purpose. These two things. In other words, how clear am I about my personal sense of identity? Who am I? How am I answering the question, who am I? And secondly, how clear am I about why I am doing whatever I am doing? Even in terms of my daily life, how clear am I about the purpose of why I'm doing it? Now, people who spend time answering these two questions of identity and purpose, they develop a high SQ. And the sign of high SQ is two things I have observed in such individuals. One is they own their sense of motivation. Their motivation is internalized. It's not just for their job, but it's like the red thread which runs through their work life, their home life, their personal life, their social life, everything. They own their motivation. The other kind of motivation, which is an externalized motivation or emotional motivation, is based upon a reward scheme. If you do this, then I'll give you that. So there's an instant motivation, but it does not last very long. Second sign of high SQ is such a person has a deep-seated sense of contentment. That contentment remains even when things may not be going so well according to the so-called plan. Even when an individual fails, or even when he or she faces adversity, the inner contentment is not disturbed. And even further, a person with high SQ is able to use adversity to make the self stronger, to grow, to evolve, to become more mature as a human being. So how do you get that? How do you develop? Well, these are two big areas to explore, and I think I have 2 minutes to explore these two life important issues, but I'll try and do it with diagrams. So one moment. Yeah, basically, can you see this? Yeah, I think you can. So who am I? The question of identity. So 3 realms from which we can live. At their very core is the being realm, the inner being, I, the energy or the spiritual energy, I, the soul. But very rarely do we spend time in this realm. Mostly our thoughts are within the doing realm or the having realm. In other words, we are concerned all day long with the things I have to do and the things which I own, my so-called possessions. And this means things like my job, my family, my nationality, my culture, my responsibilities, my XYZ. You know, the list is endless. And pretty much everyone lives in this zone, which I'm calling as the ego zone. So ego is simply the result of identifying with what I do and what I have. That's what generates this energy called ego. And when we are living within the ego zone, then quite naturally, there will be ego-based emotions. And these are all the emotions such as anger, fear, loneliness, jealousy, anxiety, the whole range of emotions. These are all ego-based emotions. Spiritual intelligence means, let me live in the being zone. In other words, I am not what I do. I am not what I have. I am the spiritual energy. I am the soul. I am that living being of eternal peace. This is the beginning of the solution to absolutely everything. I remember being told many years ago when I was growing up that the way to deal with any adverse situation is first to stabilize yourself in true self-awareness or true self-respect. First, stabilize your mind in that sense of peace and your dignity, and then look at the issue at hand. Do not immediately try to solve a problem, but first solve yourself. Solve yourself means make sure you are in your dignity, in your self-respect. Then when you look at the issue at hand, it will not seem bigger than you. So spiritual intelligence, in the first step is this, to live in what we describe as soul awareness or soul consciousness. I'm going to just steal 1 or 2 more minutes to show you another diagram here. Yeah, I call this as soul space. So here at the very center is this tiny star, which is you, the soul energy, you, the eternal spark of life, which exists in the center of the forehead. And this is known as your soul space or your Atma sphere, the sphere of energy around the Atma or the psyche or the soul. So what has happened to us over a period of time is that we have allowed that soul space to be infiltrated, infected, and polluted by these ego-based identities. And they're all to do with what you do and what you have. And this is the problem. This makes us spiritually unintelligent, because then we start living from my skin color, my nationality, or my profession, or my status, and so on. Why it's important is because your sense of identity determines your emotional state. If we really wish to deal with negative emotions, we need to explore identity. And spiritual intelligence offers the first answer, and that is, I am a peaceful spiritual energy. So I'm going to pause there and just hand back to Gitte.
Thank you, Yogesh. And really lovely pictures and very clear presentation. And I really like this, how in a simple manner you explained how we are in the doing and having area and call that ego. Very, very, very good. And others can also now write in the chat box your questions if you have something to ask. And it can be in Finnish or English. And but I start with the first question. Even if we want to be in the being and we have some glimpses of that, it has a strong gravity to drop into this having and doing zone, even our best intentions. So what is your tips? How did you make the transformation to be in the being zone?
Yeah, that's true. It's true that, if we don't pay attention, we naturally will gravitate into the doing and the having realm for 2 reasons. One is our own habit is to do that. But secondly, we live in a world in which everyone is in the doing and having realm. So just by going out and interacting in the world, that's what happens. But that's where we need not just meditation, but a systematic, methodical practice which we're doing regularly to remind myself to go into the being zone. And so what I would recommend, and it's our daily practice, is first thing in the morning, start the day with meditation. First engage with yourself before you engage with life. Why? Because your experience in the morning affects the rest of the day. Even before you engage with your mobile device, first engage with your spiritual self, your inner self. So that's one thing. Secondly, as you go through the day, we need reminders because we do forget. And therefore, we have this system which we call as traffic control for the mind, where you may try to stop, if you can physically stop for 2 or 3 minutes, maybe every couple of hours or so, or at least once mid-morning, at least once mid-afternoon. Just withdraw from what you're doing and just come back to that self-awareness, and we'll practice that in a moment. Then thirdly is when you end the day, important to shut down the mind properly. Just as when you close a computer, you sign out, you log off, you switch off, there are steps involved. The same way, to put the mind to sleep properly, so allow the thoughts of the day to allow the mind to empty the thoughts of the day, multiply everything by 0, just come back to that awareness that today the theater of life is finished for today, the curtain has closed. Just become aware of yourself again as that peaceful soul energy. So beginning of the day, end of the day, and in the middle of the day, these 3 practices help us to be in the being zone. It's also useful to be with others who are also practicing the same thing. Anything challenging is easier to do with others. So, going to the meditation center and studying, sharing experiences, and listening to others as well.
Very nice. And it's also, while listening to you, Yogesh, there's a realization that it's important to renew our motivation. You talked about the motivation. Renew why I'm doing this. Maybe many who are today listening already have this habit, but so that it doesn't come boring routine, it comes maybe more like doing rather than being also this moment. So very, very lovely way of finding new way of motivating yourself also. Thank you very much. We have here one question. How to change challenges into strength?
Yeah. I mean, this is connected with a very important principle of life. I'll share this phrase in Hindi, then translate it. Jaisi aapki drishti, vaisi aapki srishti. What that means is, as is your vision, so is your world. It's such an important and beautiful phrase. And what it tells us is that I may not be able to control what life is bringing to me, but I can absolutely control how I choose to receive it. So challenges can make us stronger if I ask myself, what can I learn from this? And I believe that everything that we need to learn in terms of our spiritual growth and growth as a human being is all connected to some form of virtue. This is the highest of all human learning. So in some situation, for example, life is asking me to work on my tolerance, for example. In another situation, I am being asked to practice forgiveness. In some other situation, let's say, for example, you're being criticized. whether it's a one-to-one criticism or somebody's criticizing you in front of a group of people. So there, the lesson for me is to work on my self-respect. I'm not going to lose my happiness, lose my dignity. So rather than focusing on why they're behaving like this, or isn't it horrible what he or she is saying, that's their business. My business, I'm not going to allow my dignity to shake. I maintain my self-respect. Let's say somebody is being angry towards you. And usually when someone's being angry towards you, they are looking for you to get emotional, to get upset, to get angry back. And for them, that's a victory. But there I have to ask myself, I'm not going to take sorrow from this individual. The thing I have to work on there is remaining steady, firm, unshakable. So we use situations to make us stronger. If I can see what is the virtue that I need to practice at this moment. Everything is connected with where the attention of my mind is going. Now, let me just add one more thing. You know, it is sometimes said life is a classroom, which is a beautiful metaphor. But if life is a classroom, then who are we? We are students. If life is a classroom and we are students, then who are the teachers? The teachers are the people you find difficult and situations which are difficult. So I have to reframe or rebrand a difficult person as my teacher. How do you feel about that? Think of someone you find difficult. Everybody has one person, at least. Now just write, you know, with an invisible pen on the forehead, my teacher. So whenever you find that person behaving in the way you don't like, just remember this situation is reminding me to work on my dignity, my self-respect, my peace of mind. So this way, by reframing the situation or by giving new meaning to a situation, I can actually grow and become stronger. Yeah.
Very nice how you transform awkward situation. We want to run away, more like we're looking forward for that situation. So very nice. Yogesh, you radiate strength and power. Is it something you naturally were born, or have you had a lot of teachers around you? Or both?
Well, I mean, one thing I can say is I've had the great fortune of being exposed to, you know, really great people, really great teachers. Some of them, you know, of course. And so I suppose as a child, you know, when you grow up in that environment, it's usually one-way information, and the visual images create the greatest impact. So I think I've gained a lot through growing up in that environment and absorbing the wisdom that others have displayed.
Wonderful. So, yes, we would have 10 minutes meditation. And also for others, you will find Yogesh's meditations also in YouTube. They have very catchy titles. So today we have a taster here in today's talk for meditation. Welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to be playing a little bit of music and I'll speak out a commentary. So if it's comfortable for you, you can have your back straight and your feet on the floor if you're sitting on a chair. And it's a beginner's meditation. If it's comfortable for you, you can have your eyes just half open, or some people really prefer them closed, so that's okay too. But then just pay attention not to drift away or to get drowsy. Okay, so let's start. So let's take a few moments just to be with my own self. In this meditation, let me experience the peace and the stillness which is at the very core of my being. There is a world outside of me, the world of doing, the world of noise and movement, the world of action, and there is little I can do about the world outside. But there is also the world inside. The world of my thoughts, the world of my feelings, the world of my experiences. It is my thoughts which lead to my experiences. And I am the creator of my thoughts. And I can choose the thoughts I wish to create. And so let me explore the first reality, and that is the question, who am I? Behind the roles and responsibilities of my daily life, who am I? Behind the masks I wear every day, who am I? Behind the labels that I carry, who am I? There is more to me than these labels, these roles, and these responsibilities. And when I look in the mirror, I see the reflection of my face, my body, but there is more to me than simply this. And so just bring the attention up towards your face and up to the center of the forehead. And here at the center of the forehead, picture a beautiful tiny star of peaceful light. This wonderful star of peaceful energy at the center of the forehead. And this tiny radiant star is me. This is I, the eternal self. I am this living point of spiritual energy. I am a soul. I, the soul, I am eternal. I can never finish. I can never die. Deep inside, I, the soul, there is a reservoir of inner peace. And this peace has always been inside me. This peace is my natural state. Now I remember I, the soul, I am light. I, the soul, I am eternal. I, the soul, I am peace. I am still. I am silent. I am free. Just be with this feeling for a moment.
Thank you very much.